You're in for a treat, Clutterbugs, because today I'm interviewing one of my favorite people on the entire planet, and that is Matt Paxton. You probably know Matt from doing Hoarders for years. He was on the hit show Hoarders, helping people let go of huge amounts of stuff. But before he actually started on Hoarders, he actually ran a business doing this, clearing out spaces for years. So he knows what he's doing. Like, he is an expert. He then had a show called Legacy List, which I am so obsessed with this show. It really brings in the emotion and the heart and the why behind the clutter and identifying what's important. And now he has a new show coming out called Filthy Fortunes on Discovery. It's coming out March 9th. Super exciting. And of course, he still has his incredible business, Clutter Cleaner. So welcome, my favorite human, Matt Paxton. Matt, hi, welcome. You're doing insane things.
Yeah. Yeah, we're busy. It's exciting. 15 years of hustling and it's all happening in 1 month. It's kind of crazy.
This is crazy. The last time I talked to you, you had some things in the pipe that you were talking about, and you were already insanely busy. Now I just see this incredible trailer for your new show, and you just happened to launch a new business at the same time. Do you sleep, man?
No, 5 hours a night. That's it. And, we got a bunch of teenagers in the house. And no, I don't sleep much. I think I'll sleep in like next year. I mean,
Yeah, I'm happy for you
yeah.
because here's the honest truth. If you don't know anything about Matt Paxton, you're nuts, and I'm gonna put all the
Thank
links
you.
to all of
Yeah.
his stuff down below. But you do the hardest part when it comes to decluttering and organization is that you take people who have hoarding tendencies, whether they're true hoarders or they're just collectors or they don't trust banks, so they buy a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff to store, and somehow you get them like to let go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how. I guess I'll tell you how I do it. But yeah, I mean, I've done the worst jobs. I think I do the most challenging jobs is the best way to say it. And I've been doing it for 15, almost 20 years. I guess professionally 20 years. And it's crazy. I mean, but like it's all I know. And so it's all I do. But like if you look at the demographics and you look at I mean, like I've never been busier. And I've I started doing this at 24 and I'll be 50 this year. So technically I've been doing it longer than I haven't, which is crazy to me.
And it's the hardest thing in the
Yeah.
world getting people to let go. And I do see that people, I mean, it's easier to get stuff now. It's cheaper to get stuff, and there's a Target
Yeah.
on every corner. And yeah, there's an epidemic of clutter
Sure.
happening in the world. But you take it to the next level. And I mean, I was a huge fan of Hoarders. You're like the king of Hoarders. That was such a good
Uh,
show, man. But then you brought another side with Legacy List. And
yeah.
before we talk about your new show, I'd actually love to talk just for a second about Legacy List because I feel like that was so impactful on an emotional level. And I think, yeah, talk about that. And then let's talk about some of the myths behind people who tend to hoard.
Yeah, sure. So started on Hoarders, 15 years. That show's self-explanatory. Cleaned the messiest homes in America. That's how people got to know me. I was very lucky where here in America, public television brought me in PBS to do my own show. And it was a show called Legacy List. And it was really simple. It was basically built on my theory of a legacy list is a list of the 5 items that matter the most in your family and they help you really prioritize your family story, your family history, and your culture. And it's a technique I've used in my with my families for decades. And it started off I called it a fire list, and it was if your house catches on fire, what are the 5 items you want to keep? And I would use that with my hoarders just to get them to prioritize what mattered most, right? And then I would also use it to prove that hey, you can't, your house is too messy to grab it. So I'd pull out a stopwatch and I would go find it. Your house, you got 2 minutes, and they couldn't find any of the items, and they'd trip over stuff and fall. And so I was like, see, I got you. Now let's clean the house out. And when I started working more with seniors about 10 years ago, I realized like, oh, this is the chance for them. Everybody was getting stuck and nobody could get started. And so we started doing this legacy list just to get people to get started because they would, they say, well, nobody wants they give me all these, nobody wants my stuff. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to help me. I got all these pictures. I spent a lot of money on that. They'd give me everything they used to justify why to keep it. But they wouldn't tell me why are they calling me? Like no one calls me for fun. You call me because you got to move, someone's died, like something real's happened, life has happened. And so I was like, great. And so then I used this legacy list to create emotion, and then the emotion would be the why. We all the influencers, everyone that works with people to help them clutter, we always talk about the why. And the legacy list was my way to sneak you towards that why, because you'd spend an hour telling me how amazing all these family members were. And then I'd be like, awesome. So why are you moving? And then they would like tell me, like, oh yeah, so you're going to move closer to your grandkids. And so what I would do is totally use this legacy list to trick them into telling me their why. And then their why is what would keep them from quitting. Right? They're like, oh, so we can quit right now and you cannot see your grandkids. Or we can just
Mm.
keep going and you can just live with your grandkids. And so it
Mhm.
was totally a trick. And it works. It totally works. But I was very lucky. If you don't know me, I will talk forever. So long story short, PBS was a great place because it let me really it's the only station you could actually just tell stories. And that's what it, like I said,
Mm.
it's still on 5 seasons. It's on PBS. We're not making it. We're kind of on a hiatus for the next couple of years. But really all we did was I'd go to your grandma's house and visit. And I'd say, tell me the coolest 5 things you got. And they would tell me. And they go, oh, and I'm like, where? Like one lady she had her uncle she said she was a bodyguard for Eleanor Roosevelt. That was the story we were given. And we're digging through the basement, and we did actually find all that stuff. We found his service pistol. He, in fact, was a CIA agent for Eleanor Roosevelt,
Stop.
and she didn't want him
What?
to have a pistol. She didn't believe in guns, and they actually didn't believe in Secret Service. They thought that politicians should just be servants, and there shouldn't be all this hoopla, and that America shouldn't waste taxpayer monies on protection. That was Eleanor Roosevelt's thing. So he had to hide a gun in his leg. He would hide it in his ankle, and so it was an ankle pistol that we found, and it's CIA issued. It was crazy. And
That's
then
so
yeah,
cool.
right. And we found it in this lady's basement, and then next to it was a tape, like a what's the roll? The roll, not it's a reel, like a reel to reel
Okay,
tape.
like an
Yeah,
8 millimeter.
yeah,
I don't
eight
know.
millimeter. Yeah, it was an eight
Yeah.
millimeter tape of Jackie Onassis Kennedy riding horses in their backyard. And she's like, "Oh yeah, the Kennedys liked to ride horses, but they couldn't do it in D.C., so they would come use it. They were out in the country, outside of D.C. And so
Is
we
this
found this.
stuff just like mixed in with
Yeah,
random
yeah, it was
trash?
next
There's
to
like
some rubber
Care
bands.
Bears and
Yep,
stuff down there
yeah,
and
it was
like
next to like
bills from.
rubber bands and marbles and just same stuff like the Bed Bath and Beyond coupons, right? Like it was next to all that stuff, and it's history, right? But that's what that show was about, was saying, hey, like everybody's got 3 or 4 really cool things in their house, and let's just share those stories. And so I kind of went on a mission for the last 5 years, like let's just tell the stories. Like it's all about the stories, and I've been really lucky to do that because in my real life business, cleaning out houses, that's what we do. We help people clean out the houses, and we get to hear all the stories.
I love it. I think I love it because it really reinforced this thought that I had. When I'm going into a client's house, I usually have one day to declutter.
Yeah.
And it isn't hoarders, but it's bad. Right? There's no surfaces. I can't organize when you have excess. So I have one day I spend to declutter and one day to organize. So we have to go fast. And it's always like, well, everything's special and everything's important. I pull out a big empty tote and I say, this is your memory bin. Let's just look for the special stuff and put it in here to keep it safe. And as soon as you do that, when you start there, when you feel like your memories are protected and the stories are protected and the important stuff is at least safe, suddenly nothing else feels special
As important.
anymore.
Yep. As important.
Right. So like you take people who are really struggle to let go and now they've like it's literally a Rubbermaid tote. It's like $8 from Walmart and somehow that has switched and they're like, okay, that can go, that can go, that can go. And so
Yep.
this is a trick I've been using and I feel like you have the same approach. It's like,
And,
well, as
yeah.
soon as we protect the best of the best, as soon as we like make sure that's safe and that legacy will live on,
So
the
you
rest of the
use
stuff doesn't feel
So
important.
keyword there is legacy. You gave them a physical space to store that legacy. I gave them
Mhm.
a numerical number to preserve that legacy. Same difference. We just use different
Yeah.
boundaries, right? And actually love that bin. What I'll do is we'll drill holes in the handles and put zip ties on it, and then we have the client sign the zip tie, and that way they know nobody can steal it. Because with a lot of our hoarders,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
poor man's safe. We do that all the time because it makes people think
That's
because they'll be like, well, this is my most important stuff. You're going to steal it. And I say, well, not now. And we literally just drill a hole in it, put a white zip tie on it. They sign it. It's a 99-cent zip tie. And then that way it's like protected. They know that no one can steal it. And that has
Because
always helped us. Give them
oh,
going.
that's so
Yeah.
good.
It's so
I
silly.
I
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because I definitely want to talk about your new show and your new business. And all of these things tie in together. It's people who have way too much. They can't find what's important, the good stuff, and it's ruining their life, the excess. But
So
do
that's
you
what I don't mean to plug. That's the key. It's ruining their life. It's holding them from. It is a barrier. It is a mountain. It is holding them back from a better life. Period. And that is what we do. We help people get that to that better life. Yeah.
love that. Do you talked about like the mistrust, worrying, even though they've hired you and you're a professional and you're famous, you're Matt Paxton. They're like Matt Paxton might steal my stamps,
Sure.
kind of thing.
My grandma still puts her hand through the purse. Or she did. She passed away this year. But even up till last year, my grandmother would put her purse through her arms at Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like somebody from the bank or from the family is going to steal your stuff, right? And we all got that aunt,
Right.
the great aunt that does that. Well, it comes from they were so now. I mean, when I started cleaning 25 years ago, those women were the ladies I would the 75-year-old women that I helped then were first of all that felt really old at the time, and now I'm like, well, I'm 50 this year. It's not that far away, right?
Yeah.
But those old 75-year-old ladies, which are not old anymore, um, they were the last kids of the Depression. So they remember banks taking stuff, the government taking stuff. I mean, like they remember losing things. So it's not that they don't trust you. They don't trust anybody. It has nothing to do with you.
Mm.
And so I've always learned to just laugh that off. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to steal that HSN, those Beanie Babies. Yep. I definitely am going to steal your Beanie Babies because I don't see them every week. Right. And I could just engage in all of that or just acknowledge that, hey, yeah, you don't trust anybody. I totally get it. And so then we just started creating a lot of techniques in the last 20 years, like everything I do to earn trust, right? And so I just
Mm.
like overly teach my teams how to earn trust from everything we do, from that little bucket to like when I go into a house, I have no pockets anywhere. My pants are actually sewed. There's no pockets in my pants. And believe it or not, I have a different color yarn, like a different color string on those pants. So the client sees it and says, well, what's that? Your pants are weird. And I go, well, yeah, that's actually, they're sewed shut so that I can't steal anything. And they're like,
Yeah, which
oh,
is so fascinating to
yeah.
me. So I have to ask, do you find people who tend to have hoarding tendencies, like they really want to hold on to things, is there a correlation between like mistrust of banks, mistrust of government, mistrust
Yeah.
of things?
Yeah. Well, I mean, hoarding is caused by trauma, right? So something bad happened in their life. So they're expecting this to be bad, right? And a lot of times I've
Mm.
been called because the families told them they're gross, they're disgusting, they're filthy, they're awful. So they've already, the whole world's shit on them, excuse my language. And then I show up and I'm like, hey, trust me. Well, they don't trust anybody. I mean, the main traumas were like, loss, abuse, death, divorce. Like something bad happened to them. That's what caused the hoarding. And they're just modern day hoarders are just unhappy, right? They just didn't find happiness and self and worth. They didn't have as much horrific trauma, but they are looking for their happiness and self worth and stuff. And so what we found is they're just unhappy, and so they naturally don't trust anybody. And this is where it gets deep. The one thing they can trust, the one thing that hasn't abused them, hurt them, left them, divorced them, called them fat, ugly, nasty. The one thing that hasn't done that is the stuff.
Mhm.
And so the stuff is safe, right? I mean, it's literally a wall from the world that's hurt them. And so I always say, just like, you got to remember that, like, that's the nicest stuff they have. Like, I mean, it's no secret, I got a lot of kids. And we've seen different kids go through these same situation where, like, they overly are attached to stuffed animals, right? To an extreme. Like, they act like they're alive, right? And they're their best friends. And then you find out the more you dig on that, it's like, oh, okay, he's being bullied at school. He doesn't have a lot of friends. His brothers make fun of him all the time. Like the stuffed animals are the one thing that are safe, right? And so these young
Yeah.
kids create this amazing life with these stuffed animals. Well, people do the same thing. It's just with stuff, right? We call it
Yeah.
the fake future or the perfect past. And so you'll hear people if you're working with a hoarder that tell you how incredible the future is going to be. I'm going to create a museum. I'm going to do this. It's all grandiose. Or they
It,
talk
it
about how amazing it was in the past, right? How
yeah.
amazing it was in the past. But what they're avoiding is now.
Now.
present, because now
That's so
sucks.
true.
Yeah, now
Everything
sucks.
has a story of
Yeah,
either what it was or
yeah,
what
yeah.
it's gonna be.
It's gonna be amazing.
It's
Or
gonna
oh
I'm
man,
gonna
this
turn
is
this into something and I'm gonna be like
yeah.
start a business and
So
sell.
let's
Yeah.
so let's dig into that.
Mm.
The reason is now sucks, right? Now my kids
Yeah.
don't like me. My spouse and I fight all the time. I've gained 30 pounds. I've lost my job. I used to be a high school athlete. Now I get tired when I walk up the damn steps. Like now is hard.
Yeah.
And I can't move because I got too many damn beanie babies in the basement, right? Or I'm broke and I need to sell all this stuff. Whatever it is, now is heavy, now is hard. And so that's why I focus on the past or the present. I mean, guys do it. I'm 50 now, right? Like, I mean, I can't tell you how much I talk about high school. Dude, I didn't even like high school. But like we act like high school was amazing. No. I mean, beer was cheaper. Like that's it, And I didn't have
Yeah.
like responsibility. But like we talk about all, or when I retire, I'm going to do this and this and this. We're going to
Yeah.
move to Hawaii when
Oh.
I retire.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna travel
everyone
the
does.
world. Everybody. I
Everybody
know.
does it in different levels. It's just easier to
Uh
crap on hoarders because their house is messy.
Yeah, I mean, I used to really struggle with clutter. I wasn't a hoarder, but I really struggled with clutter, and I was broke.
Yep.
I was broke, which is ironic that I had so much crap when I had no money, but I was stuck in something I call the scarcity cycle. So I didn't trust because I was always running out of money and I was kind of impulsive
Yep.
and I didn't save it. I didn't trust that the money would be in the bank. So when I got my paycheck, I'd be like, I better go to the store and buy extra food.
Yep.
I better buy these pants now because I won't be able to afford them next week.
Yep.
I better stock up, better get this, because the money's going to be gone. And then I started seeing instead of like money as safety and security, stuff felt safe and
Yep.
secure. So I'd get 20 bucks in my pocket and I would have to spend the 20 bucks to buy something before the money was gone. Make that make sense, Matt, because I was just
Okay.
wasting the money, you
Yeah.
know?
No, it makes sense because so like I'll take it back to like I did that as well as a dad, right? I'm a kid of the 80s and our parents as a whole, Gen X, our parents weren't really around that much. And so when we they get crapped on a lot, but it is what it is, right?
They were not
And
around.
they were not around. And it is what it is. And I love my mom. If you're listening, I love you, mom. But like when we finally started making money, our generation, we went out and bought a ton of stuff to show our kids how much we loved them, right? And then we
Mm.
went to every single sporting event. We went to the opposite, right? Like I'm going to be at every event. You're practicing at band tonight for 13 minutes. I'll be there on the front row, right?
Yeah.
And then we take them out, spend money, and so we went to overcompensate for our insecurities and our negativities, right, from our upbringing. And then we overdo it with our kids. And then so we started, I'm going to love my kids so much. I'm going to buy them so much stuff that I'm going to have to work so much that I never see them. Right?
Yeah.
And then, and then you never see your kids and you feel so guilty for never seeing them, but you love them so much. So what do? You buy more shit, right? And it becomes this vicious circle of buying more and more and then never being there. And we all did it. Like I did it too. Like we all
Mm.
did it. And then we got a house full of crap, right? It doesn't matter. And but we were doing it because we loved our kids, right? And our parents worked hard. Our parents were never around for us because they loved us. They were trying to provide for us, right? Because they grew up in the depression, or their parents grew up in the depression and had nothing. So like it's very cyclical. I see it all. I work with so many families now. I've been doing it so long that like you see the same story each generation to the point where like now the millennial kids they don't want anything.
I
Millennial
know.
minimalists, like the MMs, right? They don't want any of it, and they are now behaving like our grandparents did, where they buy like one item, they'll thrift it, they'll buy it, and then they'll like fix it. Right? Like the other day, my son was like, my 11-year-old was like, "Dad, my hoodie ripped. Can you sew it?" I'm like, "No, it's a Target hoodie. I'll just go buy a new one." He's like, "No, I love this hoodie. I wear it everywhere." He's not a hoarder. He just likes the stuff that he has, right? He's like, "Can you sew it?" I had to put on a new zipper. I had to sew it. I'm like, I put probably 3 hours of labor into a $20 jacket, and I price my labor at 25 bucks an hour at home. Like I try to when I try to account for my time, I'll say, okay,
That's smart.
right? If I spend 4 hours on something, could I buy a new one for $100? Because that's the
That's
time I
really
wasted on it.
clever.
So I always put my time at 25 bucks an hour, and I
Because
think
you're
everybody
busy.
I'm busy, but like everybody should do that. Like your time is really what makes it not a viable situation usually. And like when I work
Oh
with,
my gosh, that is so
yeah,
good. I think for everybody listening at home, please just really hear Matt because I can't tell you how many people are holding on to like holy socks that they're going to
Yeah.
mend and all these things they're going to do. They should, could, would, and it's just adding up to extra stuff. And the truth
Yeah.
is their time, you're right. Even if they ever got around to it, their time is worth so much more.
So much more. And time with the kids, time with, what about, you're like, oh, I'm going to save 50 cents. And it's like, yeah, but you spent $50 of your time saving 50 cents. Like,
Oh
so
man,
my,
think about that when you're waiting in line for Costco gas, people. Wait.
well, like, I mean, this is a common one where I'm saving this, I joke about the Bed Bath and Beyond coupons, but like, I still find them. By the way, that company is bankrupt. Not are they, those are not expired. They're bankrupt, right? And people say, well, no, they're coming back. Somebody bought them. It's like, I don't care. Those coupons are invalid. Like, but then people will drive across town. They'll spend gas. They'll spend 2 hours to save $8. I'm like, you just spent $50 plus gas. So let's say $53 to save $5.
Hmm.
Was it worth it? Right. And I try to just let the math, it's a spreadsheet decision. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. There's 100 ways to skin a cat. And, I just want to, whatever, that's a horrible analogy, sorry. But whatever, there's 100 ways to get to California. I don't care which route you take. Right.
Yeah.
But I want you to make sure mathematically it makes sense. And that's one way I try to do it. But we all do it. And I use humor a lot because we all do all these things. But at the end of the day, what I've learned from 25 years of working with hoarders and seniors and stuff, we hold on to stuff because we love people that are attached to the stuff. And that was kind of like what I learned. Hoarders for 15 years, I was learning like with all the trauma and all the negative sides of it. And I really got to understand the hardest parts of decluttering and the hardest parts of why we fill it up. And then on Legacy List for 5 years, and then cleaning out estates for the last 10 years, I've really gotten to understand, okay, well, here is the celebration of it. So when I put those two together, you'll see me walk into a hoard now where the rest of the world is saying, you're filthy, you're disgusting, you're gross. And all I see is, holy crap, you had a lot of people in your life that you loved. And there's a lot of people that
Oh.
loved you. And that's a mindset switch that I know is really cheesy, but like that's actually what's up. Like our houses are full because we felt loved, we felt valued, we felt like we mattered. And that stuff is proof that we mattered and that people cared about us. And so I really have changed it to the man, you had so much love. Look at all this stuff. Tell me some of the stories. And so that's where I hear the stories. And it's taken me a long time to switch, right? But I really see that now. It's like, man, you loved a lot of people.
I love that so much. Do you think that that's kind of the biggest myth about hoarders? Is there a myth that people have, the general public has,
Sure.
about people who have like really
Yeah.
cluttered homes?
How much time do we have? Here's the hoarder myths that it's only 60-year-old white women with cats.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, it's always the cats.
on the cat thing is real, and we'll talk about that. On the show, we found on hoarders, it was only white women that were willing to go through the embarrassment to save their family.
Mm.
And so that makes sense when you look at it that way. It mathematically actually men hoard at a 51% rate versus 49% for women. But men, we get them as estate cleanouts, which means they died. Yeah, they held it. They held the story to the end, right? They're stubborn. Well, no shocker there. Women will go through the embarrassment to help their family. Men don't. I don't think that's a difficult thing to explain. I think people think you're right.
Mm.
But it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with sex. It has all to do with trauma. Now, you could say certain type of people experience trauma more. Yes, I would say women definitely experience trauma more than men do if we look back over the last 50 years. And so, yes, we've found people trying to find their value and their self-worth and stuff. I mean, back in the early 2000s when I did this, it was always Home Shopping Network,
Mm.
right? And so they were buying just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. These were a lot of stay-at-home moms that were, it was single family, families with two kids, the white picket fence and the dog, and the dad worked and mom stayed at home. And then mom got the bad rap that she was this horrible hoarder. Well, no, she was trying to find her self-worth and her value and her, and independence and why she mattered. Right. Well, now we've got a single mom that is a CEO, CFO, doctor, lawyer
Yeah.
that buys a lot of shit on Amazon because she doesn't want to miss out. Both houses are full. They're full for different reasons. But at the end of the day, we want to have the right stuff because you want to be prepared. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see it all the time. And I see it with seniors, right? Like seniors are holding on to everything because they remember not having, like they remember going without. I mean, I'll work with some, I mean, it's the last of the, some of the clients in my 90s. Like, I mean, I had a lady the other day, she remembers the war.
That's crazy.
Like, and when I'm talking about World War II, guys,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
Korea or Vietnam. And it's like, I mean, I used to ask every client, well, what did you do during the war when I started 25 years ago? And they would say, oh, I was Rosie the Riveter. I did this, I did that. And of course, now I say, did you go to Woodstock? Right? Different, different question.
Yeah. Different question.
Still great stories, right? But I'll just say we hold on to things. Our trauma is real. It's unique to every single person. It's valid. And a lot of times we blame it on stuff. Some people blame it on alcohol or drugs or exercise or faith or politics, whatever. Right? And you know where I'm going with that. I won't go there. But some people will go extreme with that or with whatever to find their value and their self-worth. For my clients, it happens to be stuff.
I'd like to take a second to thank today's podcast sponsor, Cozy Earth. I switched to Cozy Earth sheets years ago, and there's just no going back. I feel like a grown-up having luxury, beautiful sheets, but luxury doesn't have to be out of reach. Like these are affordable bamboo sheets. They're temperature regulating, and they get softer every time I wash them. I also have Cozy Earth waffle bedding for my bed. I have their giant towels. They have like bath towels. I have their pajama set, which is also made of bamboo, so soft. And I love that there's a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all the bedding and all the bath products. So right now you can go to cozyearth.com/clutterbug and use my exclusive code Clutterbug for 40% off the best-selling sheets, towels, pajamas, and more. And if you get a survey after you buy, let them know you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Clutterbug. Let's talk about your new show, because I want to talk about other stuff in a second, but I don't want to get off the rails here. Tell me about your new show. Just watch the trailer. I am already hooked.
So it's a simple sell. It's basically American Pickers and Hoarders combined. Discovery came to me and said, hey, we want to make a fun show. Can you make it a fun hoarder show? So I was like, yeah, I can make a fun, positive hoarder show that you never know you needed. So there's my pitch. It's me and my team. It's the guys that I've worked with for 20 years. I was able to get them all on TV. And these are the guys that have traveled the country with me. While I was off doing hoarders and all these speeches and books, they're the ones that are cleaning houses. And most of our client, 20 years ago, it was donate, 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 donate. We wanted everybody to donate as much as they could. But the reality is people need the money. They've invested a lot of money in this stuff and they want to try to get as much money as they can out of it. And so very quietly, we've been cleaning houses anyway, selling a lot of the stuff. And we built over the last 5 years, built a whole world of where we can, we don't own the sale part of it, but we will work with different auction houses and different groups to sell things. So the new show, it's called Filthy Fortunes. We go into a house. Usually people haven't inherited it or they're just overwhelmed by it and they want to sell everything. They've taken the 4 or 5 items that matter the most and they're just like, dude, we're done. I mean, honestly, most of our clients are people that inherited their parents' house. It's got 2 or 3 generations worth of stuff. And they're like, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know if it has any value. We don't know anything. So we go in, we start finding all the treasures. I mean, they've really made it look like we're like Indiana Jones treasure hunters.
Yeah. I was watching. I was like, is this Storage Wars meets Hoarders?
Kind of. Yeah. Except our stuff actually has value. I mean, like we found a Mickey Mantle rookie card this year. Why? We found a Sandy Koufax rookie card. I don't even know if it made the show. Right. This was a crazy story. We're cleaning out that house and it was a typical house. And as 2 generations in the house, we're cleaning it out. And we typically can get like $30,000 to $40,000, $50,000 out of a house, right? If you're cleaning everything out, because you find a car, you find some other things. We were up in a closet and we found the Mickey Mantle rookie card, which is sometimes worth, a perfect one would be worth $1 million. This one was not perfect, but it was still worth like $8,000. Which is a lot of money. I don't care who you are. $8,000.
That's a lot of money. And also, why is it just in the attic? Why is it not in a special memory bin?
It was in the guest room closet, right? And this guy was in Washington, D.C. So these both the grandfather and the father. The daughter had hired us. The daughter was my age. Father and grandfather were both passed away. They were Navy officers. Lots of entertaining. So the house is covered in like, china and crystal. And, they would have tons of big parties in Washington, D.C. back in the 70s and 80s. And we're in that like guest bedroom closet where all the goodies were. And one of my guys goes, "Who's John Wilkes Booth?" And I'm like, "He shot Lincoln." "Why?" And he goes, "I found his rookie card." And I'm like, "I don't think John Wilkes Booth played baseball." So we go in there, and it's a picture, like basically like a tintype, so like a Polaroid of John Wilkes Booth. It's dated. He signed it because he was an actor at the Ford Theater there in DC. And so we found like a playbill with John Wilkes Booth's signature like 3 months before he shot Lincoln.
You stop it.
And it's sitting next to some baseball cards, right? And the family's like, "That's super cool, but we don't need it. Let's sell it." And so like the one cool thing about this show is like we don't really know what's in the back of the hoard,
Yeah. It doesn't sound like the family knows what's in the back of the
they
hoard.
had no clue. They have no clue. And so they're trusting us to obviously go in and find it and monetize it for them. I mean, we had a house just last week where we found we went through the whole house, and they gave us their legacy list, right? They gave us the full list of what they want to keep. We found all the stuff. And then in the back, I found a watch, and it was her brother's watch. The mom. So this was a crazy. So the son had died at 50, and the mom hired us because the mom was in Florida. The sister was in Virginia, and the house is in Nashville. So we're cleaning out the house. Very emotional. I mean, a young guy dying. It was super emotional. I happen to grow up with a guy who was a good friend of mine, actually. So it was super emotional for me to clean up like a friend's house, And I actually found my signature in my middle school yearbook, right? Like crazy stuff, right? And we're going through, but I found this watch, and I'm like, "I think this is a nice watch." Flip it over, and it says "To Frank from Mom and Dad." And we realized it was this lady's brother who had passed away like 20 years ago, and it was from her mom and dad, right? So we were able to find that watch. That watch is worth like 20 grand. She didn't want to sell it. She wanted to hold on to it, right? For obviously understandable reasons. But we sold the rest of the house, pulled like 60 grand worth of guns and guitars out of the house and camping gear, sold all the stuff, cleaned the house out, sold it. We were able to sell the house, sell all the stuff, and the family was able to get out of that estate really quickly. But you never know what you're gonna find, man.
That's so. I mean, I when I first watched the trailer, I was like, I cannot wait to watch the crap out of this show. And then I instantly was like, wait a minute, because when I'm going and dealing with clients, they're always like, "But there's expensive special stuff in here that I could sell." So I was like, "Listen, is this going to make my job harder, Matt?"
Yes,
and I started.
It is. Let's just say there's any professional listening. Let me apologize in advance. Families are going to think that their house is worth a ton of stuff. Now we do show some that are goose eggs, right? Like we're very clear about the china. We're very clear about the dining room furniture. We make it clearly known
the antiques.
Yeah, the 80% of the house is worth nothing. All right, I'll tell you this. I mean, from my 25-year career, pretty much after the adult children and the grandkids have taken what they want, the contents are usually worth around $8 grand. That's what's in the house, right? And it costs me about 15 grand to clean a house. And so, is it worth paying someone 15 for $8 grand? No, of course it's not. So you have to make sure you understand the values in there. But yeah, is it going to make your job a little harder? Is it going to be a really fun show to watch? And I
can't wait to watch it, but I'm going to be cursing you the next time I go into someone's home.
Yeah. Well, it's like watching, Storage Wars. They're like, "Well, this is worth $100." No, it's not. You wouldn't get $8 for that in a store. Same thing with American Pickers. They'd be like, "Well, this is worth $1,000." Nope, it's worth $50. I can guarantee it, because I find this all the time. We found, but we do find incredible stuff, right? And then, of course, the punchline is, look, the stories are the treasure. Like, what's the treasure? It's the stories. And so I'm able to usually say that. Or your time is the treasure, right? Like, you get your life back. That's the part that people, they're like, "Oh, I've been cleaning out my mom's house for 6 months. My wife and I come up here every other weekend, and we spend the whole weekend picking through my mom's stuff." And I'll clean that. I'll bring my whole crew in, and we'll clean the whole thing out in 4 weeks or 4 days.
Yeah.
And you get your life back.
This is such a needed thing. And I think there isn't one day that goes by that I don't get emails from people who say, my mom has passed away or my dad has passed away and I'm stuck with the house filled with stuff. What do I do?
That's all we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about your new business for people listening who are in this situation. But also, can we just say, before we listen, I'm going to plug you because people need you. I wish they would do this before they pass. Yes. I wish the family would go in and make their legacy list and go through and find the special things and hear the stories from their parents,
That's
not
the
having
goal.
to discover all this amazing
Yeah.
stuff when their parents are gone.
That's the goal, right? Like the goal is that you hear my stories. I hope you hear the price tag. So I had to fight for this on the TV show. You see how much it costs for me and my team to clean out your house. So you'll see at the end of the show, it's like, oh man, we found $70,000 worth of stuff, and we had to pay Matt 35,000, and so we only got to keep 35,000. I want you to be shocked by that number. I want you to say, "There's no way I'm paying somebody 35 grand to clean my house. I'm going to do it myself now." That'd be awesome if that happened, right?
Awesome.
But if you're going to do it, create your legacy list, sit down with your family, tell the stories, get the stories out. And I assure you, I mean, if I learned one thing in the last 5 years on the show Legacy List, if you tell the families the stories, they will want the stuff. And you think they don't want your stuff. If they know the stories, they will.
It's true.
Absolutely will.
It's absolutely true. I went into my grandmother's home and was like, I don't want anything. I don't want any of your stuff. And then she brought out this book where the Nazis had invaded. She was born in Jersey Channel Islands, and the Nazi had invaded, and her dad was made to like dig trenches and do all this stuff. And she like had wrote down all these memories that she had from a kid. And I was like, of course I want
Yeah.
this, but I would
Bad.
never have known if I hadn't talked to her about this. I would be cleaning out of stuff. I'd see this notebook. I wouldn't even open it. I would have just put it immediately in the trash.
So if you're never going to watch my show, you're never going to hire my business, you're never read my book, that's fine. As long as you tell five, do your legacy list, create 5 items, and tell your family the story. Right? You can artifact. I use an app called Artifacts. You can use that. You can record it on your phone. I don't care what you do, but do something to record those stories and share them with your family because they live on forever. You know, I
Forever.
mean, forever. You know, I wrote
And
about
it's
in my book. I wrote about my dad's ring I'm wearing right here. And people now they come up to me, oh, I read your book, I love it. Is that your dad's ring? And then they want to hear a story about my dad. Right? My dad died 25 years ago, 26 years ago, and I tell the story about my dad every day now. My dad's famous, right? He's as famous as I am, and he's been gone for 26 years. And my dad would love it, by the way. And it's because I tell the stories. My kids are annoyed with all the stories I tell about my dad. And I'll argue they never met my dad, by the way. None of my kids met my dad, and they can all tell the stories for me. And they get annoyed when I tell the story. That means we're doing it right. If your kids get annoyed by your stories, you've told them enough times because they'll live on beyond you.
and everyone has stories. I think they're just not sharing them.
Yeah, every story.
You know?
I'm a very good storyteller, and I get into a house, I don't talk because the stories are better than anything I got.
It's so
I
true.
mean,
And I think about my grandmother. I think about my grandmother who has not passed, and she every inch of her, she's in a nursing home now, but every shelf is filled with cherished teddies and Royal Daltons and all this
yeah,
crap. We all joke about it in the family like, "Oh man, we're just going to get a dumpster when she's gone." But I guarantee there's something in there
trees
that
come up.
has a
Yeah,
story that is special, but none of us know it because all we see is junk and clutter because we haven't talked to
yeah.
her.
So I do this thing called Story Starters. It's actually on my website. It's on the I am Matt Paxton website. Story Starters. It's 10 questions. Actually, it's 20 questions that you can ask your loved ones, right? And it's the first 20 questions. It starts like, what was your first job? How much did you make? You know, who was your best friend in high school? Did you play any sports? Like people are always blown away when they find out grandma was like all state in softball, right? And then they find out, oh, I was a paper boy, you know, and I made 25 cents a month. You know, but then it gets bigger and bigger, and it gets into like, who's your first kiss? And it's usually the lady standing next to him, right? And then you find out it's not, which is amazing. Then you really want to hear that story, you know. And then like, what was your first car? But it builds, right? And then at the end, it's like, what's the most in I learned this, I had not, this was not my question. I was doing this at a senior living. I do a lot of I do a lot of memory events at senior living communities where we go up and they'll bring an item up and they'll do like, it's like an adult show and tell at the senior living community. And I'm like Johnny Carson interviewing these ladies, and they'll tell me these incredible stories. This one question, I didn't do it. It was a lady in the audience. She said, well, I want to ask the audience, what's the most important invention you've seen in your lifetime? And I just passed the mic, right? And this one lady's like, well, my iPad's pretty amazing. She goes, for me though, she goes, a indoor bath. I didn't get to use an indoor bathroom until I was 18. And she goes, first time I saw a car, she goes, I saw a car before I used an indoor bathroom. She goes, I couldn't believe, because it wasn't clopping, it wasn't horses, right? She's talking about picking cotton in Oklahoma in the summer, and there was 16 kids. There was one room for the boys, one room for the girls. Mom and dad lived in separate rooms, and there was an outhouse, and that's where they did it. But one day they went to town in Oklahoma City. They got to use an indoor bathroom. She goes, but I got to be honest, hair curlers for me, man. She goes, space travel is pretty cool, but for me, it's hair
Hair curlers.
curlers. And that was her most important invention of her lifetime. But everybody went through the room, and it was crazy. Like and I'm realizing, like, oh my god, this lady went from an indoor bathroom to an iPad, right?
I know. I
Right?
know.
Like that's and she starts,
It is insane. Joe's parents, Joe's mom grew up on a farm, and she used an outhouse until she was almost a teen. I think she was 12 years old before they got indoor plumbing. She is like not old, okay? She's
yeah,
like 65. Like, what are you
yeah,
talking about? You were using an outhouse and pumping water and boiling it. Like, what? I know she was a late person. Her family was a little bit cheap, but it's not the point. It wasn't that long ago, Matt.
yeah. It's crazy the amount of history that's happened, and so you have to ask the questions, right? So I'd always use these story starters. If you're not a good storyteller, use the story starters. Let them walk you through it. It's really a powerful thing, honestly. I mean,
I love this. I'm going to put a link in the show's note
yeah,
down below to your website. So
yeah.
go check that out so that you can have these conversations with your parents, because maybe opening up these conversations and then making sure that we are protecting these really special things will allow your parents to let go
Well, and the
a
side
little
benefit
bit
is
easier.
it actually jumpstarts the clean out, right?
Mm.
Because they've prioritized, they create their legacy list, they prioritized what matters, and they start telling the stories. And then you're like, oh, well, that's really cool. I'll take that. I mean, we do the hot, I think I told this last time I was on the podcast, we do the hot grandma picture. We always find a picture of grandma like looking really hot, like super fine. And so you hold on to that picture and we bring it out when grandma's having a rough day. And punchline is someone always wants the dress that grandma's wearing. And by the way, we always find the dress. Like it's, 60 years later, we find it, and everybody wants the picture. And so, like, when you tell these stories and you find out grandma wasn't this old fuddy duddy in the corner holding her purse, you start to like really get excited. And you find out, like, oh my God, all these crazy things I do is because my grandma used to do that or my grandpa used to do that. And you start connecting to your family history and your family culture. And then you want some of those items. So, like, it really does. I mean, last time I was on here, I preached it, but I'm preaching, man. Like, share your family stories because it makes it more fun. It sets something that you can share with your next generation, with your kids, and it gets the house going, and it gets them, it gets them
Yes.
to their goal, and it gets the house cleaned up. And that's the point, right? You don't want to be burdened with that house after mom and dad die.
And have no idea what's
You
special
have
and
no
what's
idea
not,
what's
and
what,
just
because
be overwhelmed with the sheer amount
when
of
they
stuff.
die, so do the stories.
Mm.
Yep. And that's honestly half of our business, like Clutter Cleaner. Half of our business is mom and dad die, or one dies and we got to move mom, or we got to clean the house out completely. And a lot of times we're trying to connect dots, but we've lost them, right? Because the stories were gone.
Yeah.
We would,
Okay. Tell me about Clutter Cleaner, because here in Canada, in my city, we have like 350,000. We have one auction house, and they are so busy. They will only take the best of the best homes.
is it Gordon?
Most people
Is it
are
Gordon's?
left. Yeah, I think it is called
Yeah, I know Barry really well. We
that.
used a
Okay.
lot of Barry stuff. There's not a lot of auction houses up there. Max sold.
No, like,
Yeah, Max
but
sold
there's a lot
before.
of old people passing away
Yeah,
and leaving houses filled with
yeah.
stuff.
So that's the business. Clutter Cleaner is exactly. I mean, if you saw me on Hoarders, that was my business, Clutter Cleaner. I sold it in 2016. I was able to buy it back last year, and it's one of those things where you just like, man, I want to put my old jersey on. I want to put it back on. And we started franchising it this year, so we're selling franchises all over the country, and we'll go into Canada as well. But we
Come
have
to
national. Yeah.
Windsor.
Oh no, we're talking to a guy in Toronto right now.
Amazing.
The goal is that we're able to take everything I've learned over the last 25 years and teach it at a local level, because it's really a caregiving situation. We're going in, we're cleaning out estates, and we're moving seniors into senior living communities, or we're just helping you downsize that house so you can sell it. But mainly it's going through all the stuff, all the memories. And so everything you've seen me do on TV, everything you've seen in my books, that's what we teach our local franchise to do. And it's really exciting. Like, we've our first 12 locations opening up. It's awesome. Like it's
I'm so
great.
excited. Like
Yeah.
as a professional organizer, this is such a needed business. There are not enough, and every day there are people who are like, "What do I do?" And so
So a
if you
lot of,
can't find an auction house to come, do you know what? Unfortunately, I say to do. I'm like, well, I guess take do Facebook free or get a dumpster, and
So
even
yeah, so
then,
we clean the stuff out. So this is the process. So we go in, we help you figure out what you want to keep. We get those items shipped all over the world to wherever they need to go, to all the different kids, right? If we're going off a will, we're going off of what the will says, right? And then we start saying, okay, what can we sell first? And we sell it, and we go to every different auction house. I mean, we had one house where literally we went from Facebook Marketplace. We had some crappy old dining room furniture we sold on Facebook Marketplace, all the way to a painting actually went to Christie's auction house. And so, like, I mean, you can have it. Our big thing is we don't believe that the house should be sold in one simple auction. Like it's got to be all over the place. And so we just disperse it to all the places, right? And then the auction house gets their cut, and then you get the rest, right? And we just get paid by the hour. But we go in and clean the house out. Then we actually will donate what we can donate, and then we trash as little as possible, and then we do a complete sweep, sanitize the house, and the house is clean, emptied, ready to sell. But like
this is life changing because you're grieving, your loved one just passed away, and now you're stuck with this house,
yeah,
and then you're literally coming in and doing it for them so they
but we get
could
to do it with them.
just,
We get to do it with
yeah.
them. That's the coolest part. If you want to participate, great. If you don't want to, that's okay too. We hear all the stories. We help you document all the stories. We do. We use this app called Artifacts that lets people like highlight all the stories. They can share them with the families. We
Oh,
like the one part we never thought we'd deal with is like the paint from 50 years ago when they painted the kitchen. Like, how do you get rid of that paint? It's harder to get rid of paint than you realize. And
yeah,
like,
I know. We gotta
Grandpa
go back.
used to clean his.
Hazard. We have one hazardous waste day
Yeah,
a year in our
yeah,
town, and it's
exactly.
just
Well, the
like, I
further,
guess you're waiting for that.
yeah. So in the States, the further west, the harder it is to get rid of paints and oils. And then, like, I mean, believe it or not, like, we were in a house a couple weeks ago, and Grandpa used to change his oil. So we had a 55-gallon drum of motor oil
Stop.
in in this garage, and it was with a bunch of old fertilizer and then a bunch of boxes full of nails, which was basically a bomb, right? Like it
Yeah.
was all the contents of a bomb.
Where are you disposing of this?
We throw it in the river usually. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you gotta like you gotta work with the localities to get the paints and to get the, I mean, but like every city, no one knows this, but every city has a dude that will collect all the paint for free, right? And so,
Really?
oh yeah, there's always some old dude that like paints all that battleship gray that you see all the stuff, or the red or the green that like the benches and stuff are painted. The guy just goes around and gets all the free paint from us. He mixes it all, and it turns into like a battleship gray. There's always a
I
guy.
gotta find this guy because
Yeah,
we bought this house. We bought this house from an
yeah,
older couple, and for some reason, every can of paint they had ever
yeah,
had they left it for us. Like,
yeah,
thank you
yeah. Thank you
for
so
these
much.
unlabeled, dried out paint
Yeah,
that you've already repainted the
yeah.
walls. Then I
And
got now
tile,
150
yeah.
cans.
The yellow tile from the bathroom upstairs that's already been replaced, but it's still under the steps. Yeah,
All the
all that stuff
flooring.
we get
Yeah.
out. Yeah, we do it all. So it's super fun. So yeah,
That's
new show, new business. Still got 7 kids, and one graduated, but she's still at home. And then we've got the 6 boys, 11 to 16, and so we got 16, six mid-teen and teenage boys. So we got a full house, man. But one
and a
cool thing
full
is,
life, and but you're
yeah,
you're like, you have your own legacy. You're literally changing lives. You're
I
changing the
think
way
so.
people deal with
Yeah,
hoarding situations. You're
yeah.
changing the way people deal with loved ones who have passed on and left their
Mm.
home left over. So
I hope,
um
I'm entering
amazing.
at 50s. I'm like, okay, well, like I'm hopefully done in 15 years. Like, what are people going to say at my funeral, right? Like I always tell people, like, say something nice at my funeral, right? And I think people will say, like, hey, this guy helped me, like, get my life, like, help me enjoy the last 10 years of my life. I got to do some cool stuff,
I'm gonna come to your funeral and
Please do.
tell that story. You told a
It'll be
story in the last podcast. I think you were like laying down on the ground and letting rats lick your eyeballs or something. I mean,
yes,
I think about that more than I should. Okay,
you're
I'm just
welcome.
like, if someone was to ask me who's the coolest person you know, without hesitation, it's Matt Paxton.
Thank you. I don't know. You've had some heavy hitters on this podcast lately.
You are the coolest
You had
person
Peter
I
Walsh
know.
on, man. That's a big deal. Like,
He's my hero. He changed my life.
Yeah, me too.
But
Yeah, I wouldn't be
yeah,
doing this without Peter. And he turned down Hoarders because he hates Hoarders. Right? He hates the show Hoarders. He despises it, and he turned it down, but recommended me. So I got on the show because he hated it so much. Like I was cleaning houses for $15 an hour when I met
yeah,
Peter, and I read his book, and it's like I always say, it's like if I got to, if my kids got to play basketball with Michael Jordan, like that's what it was like for me. You
yeah.
know,
I owe everything to Peter Walsh.
yeah.
I owe everything to him
Did you watch the
because
show? Is that what made you?
yeah, I was
Yeah,
watching Clean Sweep, and then I
yeah,
bought all of his books, and
yep,
he just changed my mindset. And then I started doing this for a living. Like I wouldn't, I'd still be living in a cluttered, messy home, living paycheck to paycheck if it wasn't for Peter Walsh.
yeah.
And I
For
know
me, it was
that.
Peter, and then ironically Zoe Kim, my Raising Simple, my partner, my wife. We, her book changed my life. I mean, people like are always surprised by that, but it introduced me to minimalism in a way where I was like, oh, this is not like hippies, like with
Yeah,
one cup, And I was like, oh, and it made me totally reevaluate what I was doing on Hoarders. And I just read her book. I hadn't met her yet. And so it really made me like rethink how I did things. And so it's
oh my god.
funny how,
Then you're just like, you're amazing. I'm gonna marry you.
well,
You
no,
just
she was,
tracked her down.
I went online to thank this old lady that wrote this book because it changed my son's life immediately. And I read the book. It was incredible. I went online to thank this old lady. And then I looked at her and she was not an old lady. She was really hot. And
Yeah,
then
she's gorgeous.
I slid into her DMs, as the kids say. And now we have 7 kids. So it's not as romantic as as it's built up to be. But like it was super cool when we realized like, oh my god, like we could actually hang out. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. Anyone that listens to this, I know a lot of. I love reading the comments in your podcast, and because where like what's cool for the professionals listening, like Cass really does kind of like this podcast really does let you know like where is the industry going, right? And so I listen to this podcast. I'm not just on it. Like it's a good podcast, so I'm gonna pump you up a little bit, Cass.
This is so good. Okay, listen, I'm just gonna say this. If you need your home cleared out, I'm gonna put Clutter Cleaner down below. But if you're
Cluttercleaner.com. Yeah.
interested in being like doing this and you said you're doing
Yeah, so we'll
franchising.
be by the time this airs, we'll have our FTD. So we can actually, yeah, we're selling in 49 states. And if you're really something like you thought you want to do and you want a kind of a fast course, we're starting to take applications now, and we interview you. We find out if you like it, if we like it. I'll tell you, you need a little bit of gray hair to do this job well. You need a little bit of gray hair, a little bit of compassion, and just you got to be tough. But if you
Yeah.
really want to help people, we have a lot of former teachers, a lot of former social workers, a lot of former nurses that have come in that really want to make a difference. Um,
Yeah. It's an amazing career. It's
it's
rewarding
awesome.
because you're not just helping someone clear
Yeah.
out, you're helping, with the memories and the
Hug and a
legacy
check,
and
man. We get a hug and a check every week, and I tell
hug
people
and a
that
check.
like
A
it's one of the
hug and a
few careers.
check.
It's one of the few careers where there's a few, but it's probably the most noble where you get a hug and then they hand you a check, and it's like, oh my god, like, and it's amazing. Like I just love it. I'm
You're
so
just
glad.
you're Indiana Jones up in here, treasure hunting in people's
Well,
homes. I love
yeah, I
it.
mean the show. It's nice that the company's featured on the show as well. I'll be honest. So we're Clutter. It's the whole Clutter Cleaner crew. Um, but the show, please watch the show. It's March 9th, guys. Sunday nights at 10 on Discovery. It's will be streaming on Discovery Plus and Max the next day.
I'm so
It's super funny. They let me just be me, and you'll see some great stories.
Is
Cash,
this going to be
you've
your
done some.
Emmy? Are you going to get your Emmy from this one? You're like,
No,
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 no.
no. It's all gone to you. You know that, man. It's all gone to YouTube. Like, I mean, my clientele still watches TV, but I mean, the promotions of this, I'm doing more podcasts than I am going on TV shows. Like, I mean, that tells you like where the industry is. And
Yeah.
I'm just glad to have one more run at just having fun on TV. And for me, the coolest part is my kids now are on the crew, and so all summer, so each week I take one of my kids to do a clean out. And so I get all the kids and they work with me and all my friends, and we get to travel the country. I mean, I got to drive our oldest son. Max ended up going from like basically like Seattle to San Diego with me last summer, and we drove, and he got to be on 4 episodes of the show. And like, I mean, when I started my first episode of Hoarders, I had no kids,
Yeah.
and now my kids are on the cleanup crew. Like it's
This
crazy to me,
is,
and I
it's,
love it. And they get to help people, and they get to see the value of service, and hustle and hard work, and it's really fun. And then they get like a can of white paint dropped on them, and they're covered, and they've got to like adjust. I mean, or they go to like one of them. We were doing a house in DC, and they picked up one of those old milk jug, one of those old big milk jugs, like from the 1800s, and it's like 3 feet high, and it had the original wood top, which you never find. And I was like, man, I'd never see those. And he opens it up, and like 50 rats ran out. And it was like a rat tomb. There was like a bunch of dead rats with skulls and stuff, and then all the live rats ran out. I mean, talking about a 16-year-old kid that's lived a pretty good life. He was scared to death, and we're just it's all
that's like the best.
Oh, it's incredible.
It's the best. Like, you're making me want to take my kids when I do a home.
Come out, man. Bring them on the show. You should come be on the show, Cash. You can be our expert on the show.
I think you're so awesome. You deserve this and so much more because you're awesome. Not only are you great on camera and you're hilarious and you're just the coolest person I know, but you're actually really freaking good at this.
Thank you.
Like you're legit. You're not doing it. It's not fake. This isn't.
I got the chops to
You're doing it. I can tell you, I've had a little taste of the TV. Most of the people, they're not actually doing it. They don't know what they're talking about. They're a pretty face smiling, saying the lines, and other people are doing it behind the scenes. That is not you.
The camera crew was like, "Oh my God, you guys actually clean the house." We're like, "Well, we promised this family that it's going to be done by Friday. We have to clean it," and they didn't know. They had never experienced that. They were waiting for like actors to come in and out. We were like,
this is the thing. Yeah. My experience with HGTV, I'm like, wait a minute, none of you no one actually does the work or designs or does any of the construction. No, you're the real deal, man. And
we're doing it. We love, and I love it. I mean, we had a guy. We did a house in New Orleans this summer for the show. You'll see it, and it was so damn hot that 2 of my guys had heat exhaustion. So we lost like 2 of our 4 main guys, and they were in the hospital, and we still had to clean the house. And the crew's like, well, what do we do? And we're like, well, you got to feature it. Like, that's life. Like, this is what happens in New Orleans, And well, anyway, it's a great show. Please give it a shot, y'all. I know TV is hard to watch these days, and you'll probably be watching on TikTok anyway, and that's fine. But just
your show is not going to be hard to watch. I'm going to put a link down below. It is awesome.
It's hilarious.
And I'm going to put a link to everything, all your things, because you're amazing and everyone needs to follow everything you do. And I just go have a nap now, my friend, because I don't know how you're doing this.
I'll do that in 10 years.
You need a nap. Okay.
10 years. Yeah. Cause you don't do anything. My God.
Oh, you put me to shame.
I'm
so impressed, and you're changing lives. And I'm just so honored to have you on the podcast. And I absolutely adore you.
Always.
And thank you everyone for listening. Please go make your legacy list with your family. I'm going to put the link to Matt's website. I want you to ask your family member those questions, and you better set a date in your calendar for his new show, which is coming out, because you do not.
Yeah. If the only thing they do after hearing this podcast is go home and tell one story, I'm happy. Like, that will start the chain of getting your house cleaned up, because you'll never stop with one story. It'll be 2 or 3 or 4, and then it's amazing. And it'll change your life. Like, you'll be happier. I promise.
You're awesome. You're just the real deal. And I appreciate it. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.